One wrong sentence can sink a brand in the digital communication era. A sentence doesn't just live in the moment, it lives in collective memory. A social media post, a poorly worded interview quote, or an unchecked slogan can become the first crack that collapses a brand's carefully built image. Brand power doesn't reside in budget but in trust, and language is the most direct pathway to that trust. The question is, how can a brand say what needs to be said without losing care and depth in how it is said? One sentence doesn't just speak for a person, it can shift the fate of an entire brand. Brands aren't destroyed by big mistakes but by small sentences taken lightly. A brand is not built from its products but from what is said about those products. In today's society, where consumers don't just buy goods but buy feelings, every sentence uttered by a brand, from the founder, the communications team, or frontline staff, has the power to trigger collective emotion. A wrong sentence isn't simply a language error, it's a sign of a misalignment in values. It prompts consumers to ask, who is this brand really? And it's this rupture in emotional resonance, not price or quality, that drives people away. Therefore, brand language must not be treated as a marketing accessory but as the ethical core of communicatio. A sustainable brand doesn't just speak beautifully, it speaks rightly, deeply, and responsibly. Wrong sentences rarely come from malice, they come from a lack of reflection. In this era of speed, the danger is not that brands don't know how to speak but that they speak too quickly. When everything demands a golden hour response, brands often fall into the trap of speaking before thinking. A tweet may be drafted in minutes but its consequences can last for years. That's where the ethical question becomes vital. Will this sentence still hold if read 5 years from now? If not, don't say it. Responsible communication doesn't mean silence, it means speaking with long-term awareness. In the age of hyper-response, brands must build pause mechanisms. Instead of reacting, reflect, review, then respond. Because a sentence cannot be unsaid and broken trust is rarely repaired. One of the most common mistakes brands make is believing that content matters more than form. They assume that as long as the product is good, how they say things doesn't really matter. But in the age of public media, form is content. A message can be misunderstood not because it's wrong but because it's said in a way that doesn't align with the cultural, historical, or emotional context. A poorly chosen word or mismatched tone can distort the entire original message. When a brand speaks, it doesn't just communicate, it redefines itself with every tone it uses. That's why developing an internal language culture is essential, where every team member understands that they are not just speaking for the brand, but as the brand. Every sentence must be treated as if it carries the full weight of years of accumulated trust. There is no such thing as just a sentence when you are a brand. Every sentence is filtered through the public lens, where meaning no longer belongs to the speaker but to the perception of the audience. This is the paradox of mass communication. You don't control the message, only the intent. And the gap between intent and reception is the space where risk lives. Therefore, a brand doesn't just need communication skills, it needs the ability to predict social response. Every statement should pass through 3 questions: 1, who might feel excluded; 2, who might feel seen; 3, who might interpret this in a way that diverges from intent. These questions don't kill creativity, they make it ethical. In brand communication, silence isn't always avoidance, sometimes it's the height of strategy. When a brand is attacked for a wrong sentence, the default reaction is to speak immediately. But if the issue isn't fully understood or the public sentiment not yet gauged, a rushed apology can become self-incrimination or worse, fuel further outrage. A wise brand knows timing is part of the message. Purposeful silence is a way to rebalance emotions before restoring language. In an era where words can be sliced and sensationalized, saying something at the right moment is intelligence, not hesitation. Silence isn't always right, but speech should never be impulsive. In a multi-platform media environment, no sentence stays confined to its original context, it gets quoted, spread, and redefined. A wrong sentence today doesn't just spark criticism, it can become a meme, a hashtag, or a catalyst for mass boycotts. Therefore, modern brands don't just need spokespersons, they need contextual translators. These are people who not only craft correct sentences, but who envision how that sentence might be clipped, rephrased, and received. Language is no longer linear, it's a network of emotional resonance. And those who use it must realize they're not writing to speak but to be read by diverse social, cultural, and psychological groups. Every sentence must be crafted with ethical imagination. Imagine who will read it, and how they might feel. A brand can be launched with a campaign, but it is sustained through everyday speech. Everything a brand does is distilled into sentences, in emails, interviews, ads, or even comment replies. And it's these small, unsupervised, untrained sentences that often cause the greatest harm. Brand communication must not be siloed in PR, it must be cultivated organization-wide. From receptionists to HR to engineers, everyone is a spokesperson. A strong brand culture is one where every individual understands. My words are the face of the whole. Language culture, therefore, must be part of the operational philosophy. When small sentences are spoken rightly, a brand doesn't need to shout. A sentence can be a greeting or a goodbye. For a brand, every sentence is a bridge either building or breaking public connection. In a world where trust is fragile and words travel farther than ever, language is no longer a detail, it is infrastructure. A sustainable brand understands a simple truth: language is never neutral. It carries values, emotions, and vision. That is why brands must invest not only in media strategy but in a culture of speech. If you believe brands live or die by what they say, share this message. Spread a philosophy of responsible communication so every sentence, however small, builds a trustworthy brand. Subscribe, share, and be part of a generation that speaks right so brands live long.